You're listening to the Faith and Friction podcast with your hosts, Mac and the Rev. Welcome to the conversation.
Oh, another conversation, Rev. And welcome to them.
It's good to be here, and this conversation is really near and dear to my heart, and I'm going to own right out of the gate that I might have a little bit of bias, conscious or otherwise, about this topic, but I'm ready.
I think it's okay if we bring some of our biases
I'm going to own it.
into the equation for this. Every episode that we do, we try to do it and be objective as we can and admit maybe that we do have a bias and why.
And I'm open to, if you feel that, call me out on it.
That's it.
We're probably not going to call each other out on it, but maybe a listener could call me out.
And that's fair. That is really fair. So, the topic for tonight. Oh,
Dum, dum, dum.
Drum roll, please. Our topic is how faith comes into friction with immigration. And in specific, the immigration that's going on right now in the United States. This happens all over the world.
Don't tune out yet. Stay with us.
Yeah. There's different dynamics around the world. We get it. All right. But we want to focus more on faith and mostly Christian faith because that's really what we read about. But I mean, it could expand to anybody's faith.
There are universal laws throughout all faith traditions, but Christianity is the foundation here. But the same principles really apply in my Buddhist communities and in my Islamic and Jewish communities as well.
Yeah, agreed. So read between the lines here as we're talking about this, that it, as Rev says, it's across the spectrum, but we are going to narrow it into the perspective of how the Christianity grids this, and then you can fill in the blanks however else you want to with whatever faith you might want to offer.
And I think rightfully so, because Christianity is inserting itself into the current national dialogue in a more proactive way.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
So I think it makes sense, right? Yeah, I agree with you. All right, so let's start out with this statement. Now, this is already going to get you probably a little bit on your get your hackles up, but ponder it. If your particular bent and you're a Christian and you have a particular perspective on this whole immigration thing, stick with us, as the Rev said.
I'm going to invite you to join us in the suspension of any bias. Recognize it, step it back for a second, and just be present with listening to what this might have to say.
Love it. Okay, so please do that. All right. So, Christian perspectives on the border. How are we going to apply faith and law? I'm going to just have two general categories here, and I think the rest of the podcast will address either one of those things or both at the same time, right? But this is an interesting statement, and I tweaked it a little bit because I didn't quite agree with the whole thing, but I think the overall idea and concept is very true, and I'm going to come at it from that. I'm standing there.
Good. Bring it on.
The Christ-like practice of striving for social justice, this is the issue we're talking about here,
sure.
Okay? Social justice will often receive the most resistance from within Christianity itself. Now think about that. Who's complaining about this right now? Well, where are we getting the most noise from? Right? Those who benefit from injustice will use religion to morally and spiritually resonate and rationalize systems and practices that serve their own interests. Typically, and this isn't just this issue. We can do that with whole lots of other issues in life as well.
Is it possible that throughout history, religion has been used as a method of manipulation or as a method of getting what I need?
Yes.
Sure.
And it's typically power and money and power.
Yeah.
Okay, quite frankly, serve their own interests. Since exclusivism and absolute biblical authority are their idols, and that's a tough word, but I think it's the right word, they will deify acts of injustice as being holy acts of God. I'll put something else in that blank. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes in there. Thus, the Christian religion can become a complicit oppressor rather than a Christ-like witness. Whoa, that's pretty condemning.
And I think we, have a both and reality here. If I look at who I consider the elder brother, the master teacher, the way shower, Jesus the Christ.
Right.
There was a both and reality. He wanted to act from a place of love, of cooperation. but he did not let that stop him from calling out and crossing borders, crossing boundaries, challenging laws that were in place because he saw that they were wrong. They were not necessarily God-centric. They were about the manipulation. So we have Jesus as my example, who did both and that's what I want to do. Right. It's okay to question the rules, not just blindly accept them. I think some people say, God said it, that's good enough for me, and then period. It's now justified what I did because it was in the name of God. I think maybe checking with headquarters or heartquarters within is an important misstep there.
Well, I think we've said on previous episodes, and we've got some that were recorded that we haven't put out there yet. And there's this whole idea that we can get self-righteous about our faith, and we can justify, like you're saying, just about anything. And just look at history. Just look at history. We don't have to make anything up.
If the foundation of your belief system is I'm right and everybody else is wrong, you're going to run into that problem pretty quick. It's going to create some friction. That no matter how good or bad an event or behavior is, if God's on my side, I'm right, you're wrong, just get out of the way.
Well, or get out of the
dangerous.
way, or you better start thinking like I do.
Right.
So
you can't break the rules, but I can because God's on my side. Well, wait a minute.
We've talked about that, and we'll continue to talk about that whole perspective. All right, so the friction. It's always great to start out with trying to point out the obvious. We talked about this in the very first episode that we did. There's obvious friction. Whoa, of course. There's the of course friction. Then there's the subtle friction that we might call up and you go, oh, I never thought about that being friction.
Yeah, and some friction that we're all missing. It's
exactly
there. I'm not paying attention to it.
Right. So I think there's going to be some aha, wow, I never looked at that as friction before. So that'll be an interesting part of this discussion. So friction. So here's a question. What or who do we place our faith in this situation with immigration? We're focusing on this as opposed to in the general sense, right? Are we placing it in God? Are we placing it in people, i.e. the government, or people that are enforcing, or whoever else is in the equation? Are you having a faith that says, well, the government's going to do the right thing for our country? I have faith that they're going to do that because they have the whole culture and country and citizens in mind.
If what's being done is out of congruity, it doesn't resonate with the God of my understanding, the loving presence of my understanding, I think it must be a both-and equation. My faith is not in one or the other, but it can be in both. I have a faith in people who have been elected to leadership, yes, but I have to have a faith in God, which allows me the discernment to go, something doesn't jive here. It's out of balance. And I think, and again, the other way, well, God said it, the government has people in there that were elected that are smart, intelligent. I have to trust them as well as ambassadors of whatever wants to evolve. But I think the minute you do one or the other, we're in trouble.
Well, yes, I totally agree. You put the blinders on many times because, again, you want to justify your position and what might benefit you in the whole thing. And so you tend to overemphasize or you get biased. And again, it's all about rationalization.
And it all requires listening. Listening before judging the people that have made a decision and listening internally to the presence of God that's telling you, you might want to ask a question here.
Right. Well, let's that's part of the problem here, that we as a collective don't do enough, and that's ask questions. And I love the way you always say, that's okay to ask questions and get answers, but maybe we need to question our answers. Isn't that what you say? I love
like to question my answers. I'm going to question my biases. I'm going to question, how did I come to this conclusion? Maybe there's a different truth here that I can be aware of.
Correct. And that's the aha moment.
I'll be honest, sometimes the wall goes up. No, I don't want it. I like my truth. I don't want to change it.
I like it the way it is. All right. I'm good with it. All right.
There's always room for growth.
Of course. That's what this is all about. That's what we do.
You've got a question here that I think is really important. Compassion, justice, or justice and obedience and compassion. Can they coexist? I think they have to coexist. Blind obedience is really dangerous. And I think a lot of people would like that. Just let me do what I want to do in the government without you questioning anything. If you do question, then I'm going to punish you for it, or there's going to be consequences. Can we have compassion and justice at the same time. I think we have to. I think we're at a balance right now.
Big time.
I don't want to be
big time.
as I've been accused, a bleeding heart liberal is just all about love and peace and granola and eating bark. But that is an essential component to growth and to evolution. And I think there must be compassion in our government that sometimes I see missing.
Yes. And we can talk about this particular government that we're facing right now in 2026 and from 2025 into 2026. But it's not like this is an exclusive thing to past administrations or even future administrations.
Every president has had to have this balance. Every president was out of balance one way or the other.
Right.
It's always trying to find that balance. That's all I ask for of my government, my spiritual leaders, is find the balance.
Correct.
Find the partnership.
And we're not. We've made a decision on this podcast as we have conversation. Past administrations at all have done certain things or not done certain things that you can agree with or that you can't agree with. We won't pull those things forward as justification for what's going on right now.
Right.
We want to treat what's going on right now, not in light of the past, not in light of what somebody else did.
Out of the gate, let's acknowledge human beings made mistakes. Every person in every senator's chair, congressman's or congresswoman's chair, or president's chair has made mistakes, and they were misguided and did things that I wish they hadn't done. But that, because they did it, does not justify that it keeps happening.
There's the point. I get that a lot. That it gets dragged, the past gets dragged as justification. And I love what you call that middle school mentality.
It is. It's middle school mentality. Your guy's bad too.
Yeah.
Yeah, our system sucks because it's lost that balance.
Right.
Can we just say, let's recognize together, sit at the table, we need more compassion. We need more understanding. We need more listening. Yes.
No kidding.
I hope so.
Well, the other thing that I run up against all the time comes to immigration as well. And that's, do the ends justify the means? Yeah. So if you put 100 people in a room, and you have a mixture of lefts and right, to whatever degree you want to call it, I'm just going to call it.
Throw some of the middle people in there. Those are my people.
Okay, so people in the middle, whatever. And you made a statement that just asked, do you think that we need to have maybe some better control than we've had in the past over border crossings and the amount of flow of immigrants into the United States?
Yep. Everybody will say, yes, we need a better system.
Okay. So we start with that common ground, which most of the time right now, it's, well, you can't think that if you're over here. You got to think this.
Well, the accusations fly immediately. You're about open borders. You want to let in everybody who wants to come into our country. I've not met a liberal who wants that. No. I've also not met any of my conservative friends that want to put people in cages and put up walls and bomb the hell out of people that are trying to improve their lives. It's the extremes. It's the judgment. It's the name calling that's with the extremes. We have to come to the middle and realize we all want the same thing, I believe.
Right. Yes, the fear factor sets in though. And so we've set up this fear, this justifiable fear of them.
Yeah, the others.
That's right. Those people, when in fact, how can I say? When in fact, much of our perception of that from what we've been told and what we read, and of course it comes from a different bias each place we read, but most of the justification for that is not quite what it seems to be. Let me give you an example. Let's talk about the drugs. There was this big thing. We got to close the border because they're bringing all these drugs from Mexico, the cartels, and all that kind of stuff. And so therefore, we got to put up the wall. We got blah, blah. The reality of that is, and you can look this up, okay, it's out there in plain English, all right? The vast majority of drugs that come into this country from Mexico across the border come through points of entry. You know what that means? Points of entry where you have the vehicles, you have the normal, regular, I'm coming from Mexico and I'm going into America or vice versa. We're not out in the middle of nowhere crossing through a tunnel or across the water. So it's not like there's all these immigrants illegally coming into the United States with drugs strapped to their back.
And is it possible that some undocumented people came in with that?
Sure.
Oh, yeah, if you want to blow that up, that small percentage. But you're saying it's coming across the border, maybe as Americans that are already citizens born here that are sneaking it across.
Yeah, it's just a misnomer. It's almost, you said it's the exception to the rule, not the rule. All right,
but isn't it easier to make my point, to get people to believe the way I believe, if I just make them all these awful, terrible, murdering, drug-addicted, drug-pushing people?
Sure.
I think that's the extreme.
Yes, it is. And once you take a look at the data that says, well, how much is negative stuff? Let's just throw everything negative in one category. The negative stuff is being created by illegal immigrants or gangs that come across the border, things that we would think, it's a very small amount, quite frankly. It happens, acknowledging it happens, and you may live in a particular area where it's more prevalent than others. We get that.
And I won't deny that that's your experience.
Yes, exactly.
But I'm going to share my experience. I grew up with documented and undocumented immigrants. Not one of them. As a teenager, when I wanted to get drugs, it was not those people I was going to. Never. In fact, they were the ones that were clean. And I knew fathers that would, man, if their kid was doing drugs, he was in big trouble. The reality, it's just my experience. So can we live in a both-and universe? Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. But the studies show the percentage is not in favor of all these drug pushers coming across the border.
When you take an approach that uses the word massive, that is fraught with issues, problems, abuse, everything. So the minute you start massively doing, in this case, rounding up the illegal immigrants, who in the beginning, during the campaign here in America, it was the violent offenders, right? We're going after those violent offenders that are illegal that we need to send back. And most people went, good. Well, that's good.
And that's something we've done really throughout history. The last 4 administrations did it too, maybe not to the extreme. When you use the word massive, we use words like this. Everybody, massive, incredible, ginormous. These are words of the human ego that needs to prove a point. It is ego-driven then. And I believe what we've done is maybe similar to what's been done in the past, but the ego is driving it. That's why it's gotten more dangerous.
Well, ego all the way up and down the line, both in the people in authority and ourselves that continue to reinforce and support it. So you really have to say, do the ends justify the means? What's the end? The end can be safety, more safety. The end can be less drugs. The end can be a more orderly, judicious process. That can be the ends. There's nothing wrong with us.
Having walked a number of people to American citizenship, I know what it takes. The tears, the sweat, the money, the hours, the years it takes. It's so complex, and we make it difficult. And these are some of the most beautiful, wonderful people that are contributing to society, to our society, in the most amazing way. And I'm going to throw it back. There's a massive amount of people in my life that have made the United States of America a better place, and they had to work really extra hard. How about we make it a little bit easier, a little bit cheaper, and get more of those people? Because those are the majority of people coming across the border.
Exactly
who can't afford it. They're trying to save their children, and 10 years, they don't have 10 years to do it. That's not excusing breaking the law.
Right.
But I think we can meet them halfway.
Some sort of compromise, right? We have designed it so that they must, if they want to be here, they have to be here illegally almost. The funnel is so small to really pump out any amount of people. And that's designed the way it's designed for a reason up to this point. And I'm not even pointing a finger at who designed it and who said it. It just is. Here we are. All right.
And you have to flip the switch. These people are not my enemy. If I've made them my enemy, then I'm going to put up a wall. I'm going to keep them out, close the borders, and shoot guns as they try to come across. If I don't, again, getting spiritual and religious, this is my brother. This is my sister. This is my child. This is what I learned from my spirituality. I have to suspend my ego's need to say it's massive enemies coming to kill my kids. This is a fallacy and a lie. And that's causing the divide.
Fallacy. There's lots of other words you can use there as well. All right. A little BS comes to my mind. It really defies not just logic, but compassion and a heart and the heart of Jesus as we begin to create more division. We demonize them all the time. Yeah. And now it fuels a fire like what just happened. You know, that woman got shot. Now it's all the Somalis. They're bad.
Yeah.
Right? Now all of a sudden we group all these people into a category that the people who are already worked up over this in justification of what happened now start to point their fingers at the Somalis.
Yeah.
So we have this huge thing going on here that just absolutely is tearing us apart day by
and what's
day.
Missing from the environment that, you know, and I had this conversation right before today's podcast. I believe in mutual accountability.
Okay.
Mutual. Everybody own what their mistake was in that moment.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Also, mutual grieving. I grieve for a system. I'm not going to demonize the man who pulled the trigger of that gun.
Right.
He's lost his life as well.
Yep.
Now, he's still living on earth. He's still got his family. That's another story. But the reality, let's all take accountability to coming to the place of how have I demonized anybody? Where is that coming from in my own psyche that I have to demonize somebody? And when it's led by religious and political figureheads, people will follow. And the lemons are going over the cliff with hate.
I love that.
We're going to feel good that we were right.
Yeah.
And there we go. And we're all perishing. So yes, I just say everybody needs to be held accountable.
Right.
The woman who made the decision to be there.
Of course.
Whatever, and we can
Have
argue.
to call her accountable now.
Exactly. And somebody lost their life. Can we just take a moment and go, okay,
Wow.
there's a loss of life. I don't care. I did the same thing around Charlie Kirk.
Right.
A man lost his life and his children lost his father. Can we live there with compassion?
Well, pointing fingers is the first response.
I remember George Floyd. We're kind of going off topic here,
yeah.
but it's like he was not a perfect human being. He made mistakes, but his life was valuable.
Correct.
It had value, and he was turning his life around. Okay, a whole bunch of people suffered in that situation.
Yeah.
And when it comes to immigration and my spirituality, I have to be able to see the value in conscious decisions to protect our country, but also conscious decisions to protect the integrity of our humanity.
Yeah, and you can't take spirituality out of that or else you're not going to get there.
No.
You know, if it's all going to be an analysis of this number and what numbers do you believe and who do you believe, then
Let me
we're
get
screwed.
so bold as to say,
We're
have we
screwed.
taken Christianity out of our government when it's not convenient?
Yeah, we've
I
applied
need it now, so I'm going to wave the Bible high now, but now it isn't convenient what it says, so I'm going to set it in the back seat. You can't do that.
No, you can't. Or a lot of times what happens too is you take the same Bible and you just interpret it a particular way that again serves your own bias. Right.
Yeah.
We've spent this time talking about what's going on, what's happening, put it in its proper perspective. What's happening is happening. It's documented that Mexican immigrants benefit in general, the economy, everything else. There's always the exception. Okay. But in general, they do. So let's go, though. We kind of started with a view from the outside in on how the Christianity and Christians are gritting all this, what response do they have toward it. And so let's go to a place that says, well, first of all, and I think we've already said it, but let's regroup. Those people, what's the problem here? What are they afraid of? Or what justification do they have to further the ends of what's going on right now? As in the fear and exclusion? Or do we want justice, right? And order? And like you said, it's a both and a lot of times.
Mm-hmm.
We can't leave either one of them out. But again, if you have a bias toward one or toward the other, you're going to justify, even if you even acknowledge the other side.
I think it requires taking that first breath, that suspending my knee-jerk response where my bias can be exposed. Boy, is it being driven by fear. Yeah. Am I afraid of something? And my spirituality says I cannot let my decisions, my actions, or my feelings be guided by fear, but by what is true. What is true of the prophets that I follow, the teachers I follow, the God that I follow.
Yeah, right.
You need that breath. And I don't think anybody's breathing. We're holding our breath and we're responding
We're
before
turning
we
purple.
actually turn on the Spirit to go, what is really true here?
Let's ask that question and seek an answer that goes beyond the checklist that we might already have.
Yeah.
That's got to be applied in this situation.
I wanted the Scripture. Find the Scripture.
Yeah.
That not the one that justifies your position, but allows you to think and pause and go, what does God want to do here? What does the Spirit of life, the Holy Spirit of love want to have happen to me in this situation?
Correct.
Through this event, not my fear or looking for a Scripture to justify my
Right.
hate.
Exactly. Let's talk about that a little bit. Because again, if we're running this through a bit of the American Christian grid, then one of the main sources for the perspective and for justification, if you want to call it that, is the Bible.
Yep.
That's where it's going to start, right there. Most will say, look, this is what God said.
Yep.
All right. And then it comes to an interpretation on their part of what God said, right? But we're going to acknowledge that. And God, is maybe the rationale is that God is a God of justice. We hear that. I hear that all the time.
Sure.
My comment to that now, I used to nod my head and figure out how that fit in when I saw what that meant, God being just versus the God of love. And that just diverged for me. That started to not mesh. That started to be, I'm either going one way or I'm going another.
The words I use to build that bridge between those two is consequent. We say it's justice with this personality-centric entity that's punishing us for our mistakes. It's just the consequences of our mistake. God so loves us that God's going to let us make mistakes.
Right.
Let us screw up so that we can evolve and that we can become. That's the bridge I have used. Choices and consequences.
I like
as
that.
opposed to justice and condemnation and punishing.
Sure. Now this goes back, and I don't think we've published out that episode we did on capriciousness.
Yeah.
We did that episode. So hang loose, gang, that you're listening out there, that we are going to follow up on this major focus on what's God like. Does God really just in any form? When you start to apply certain things to God or you break certain norms, maybe that doesn't even apply. Maybe that's not even a word you start to use, right? It's just, again, consequences of our own actions.
Yeah, when you've got a couple of scriptures here that can be used in a certain way,
Right.
And I just am noticing that one's from the Older Testament and one is from Paul.
Yep.
If I am a Christian, Paul is secondary to what Jesus said, and the Old Testament is third to what Jesus said, just as a marker before you read them, if you're going to read them. Because I want to land in the middle. These are second and third to what Jesus actually said.
Yeah, and many people, at those statements you just made, there's also going to be a little bit of friction that says, wait a minute, I believe in Jesus. Of course you do. But most of the time you're going to be preached to, you're going to be taught from Pauline theology,
I
if you will.
mentioned it before. I went to the Billy Graham Library because I found God through Billy Graham. And I was so blown away that for every one quote from the Gospels of Jesus' words, there was 15 of Paul's.
Right.
And I began to question, wait a minute, there might be a different agenda here.
All you got to do is read some church history. Okay.
Yeah.
And you don't get too jaundiced about that, but you sure don't throw your whole weight behind. We've talked about the whole inerrant.
All right,
all that
again, I profess to be a Christian, not a Paulinian.
Well, yeah, I think that's a good distinction. Right?
Yeah.
So here's a couple of verses, and there's tons more. Okay, so, we could run down the whole rabbit trail.
You picked some doozies.
I picked this one out of the Older Testament because there are several that are like this. So let me just read it first, and I'm going to give some context. This comes out of Deuteronomy. It's chapter 32, verse 8. And it says, when the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided all mankind, he set up boundaries for the peoples according to the number of the sons of Israel. Now, I've heard that as a justification for why they need to be over there and we need to be over here because God set the boundaries.
Yeah.
All right.
Mine, yours, have have not.
It's when in fact that's so misguided when you look at it that way.
Yeah.
Just try to get rid of that. He set the boundaries because there were 12 tribes. He had to set boundaries between the 12 tribes or they'd be arguing all the time. They'd be trying to take, which it happened anyway. That was then. There was a certain circumstance then, right? It just doesn't apply across the board. Can that be the situation? And some countries are battling each other for a line on the globe? Of course. But to say that in this case, that boundary between the United States and Mexico is God set the boundary. Well, you know what? Go back in history and find out where that boundary came from. All right. That's a whole nother.
It was taken. Oh, but God, see, I'm the winner. God was on my side. This is supposed to be mine. God ordained it that I have and you don't.
Exactly.
That's not the God I can believe in. That's an older testament. It helps us develop a relationship with God, but it's outdated.
Well, that's right. It doesn't apply.
Because the Newer Testament says, get rid of the wealth. You've got all the wealth. Oh, God, that's the Old Testament. I've got it. It's mine. You can't have it. And Jesus came in and said, get rid of it.
Yep.
The rich man needs to share it, pass it around.
Yeah.
I believe that applies to nations, to microcosms, to businesses, to individuals.
Yes.
And again, that's my bias.
Well,
you get to decide, but I'm saying kindness must be in balance with order.
I would agree with that for sure. So let's just take that Old Testament stuff. Let's just put it right over here. I'm going to consider it irrelevant to what's going on today, right now, and pick almost any of those verses that deal with the Jews and deal with boundaries and deal with organization and all that. That was then, this is now. All right. I think the next verse, and I'm probably not going to have time for me to read the whole thing because we're just getting there.
Bear with us because I think you should read the whole thing.
Okay, well, just hang in there, Greg. So this comes out of Romans. This is like the typical, this is the foundational place, or if you're going to go to the Bible, when it comes to authority. Let's just, whatever authority you want to talk about. Okay, here we go. Romans 13, 1-5. Let everyone be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established. The authorities that exist have been established by God. Consequently, whoever rebels against the authority is rebelling against what God has instituted, and those who do so will bring judgment on themselves. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right. I almost can't read that with a straight face, okay? But for those who do wrong, let me go back. For rulers hold no terror for those who do right, but for those who do wrong. Do you want to be free from fear of the one in authority? I got to stop right there. Then do what is right, and you will be commended. For the one in authority is God's servant for your good. But if you do wrong, be afraid. For rulers do not bear the sword for no reason. Oh, God, I read this and I almost can't get through it, right?
Well, this could be justification for Nazi Germany.
Exactly.
In 1938 or 39. Oh, yeah. Follow the rules. We'll walk lockstep with what we say because God made us the authority.
Exactly.
The God of my understanding doesn't operate that way, but it can be used as a weapon.
Absolutely, for justification. But they are God's servants, the rulers, right? Agents of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer, as defined by who, right?
Yeah.
Therefore, it is necessary to submit to authorities, not only because of possible punishment, but also as a matter of conscience. All right. Now, I'm gonna go to my left over here. I have a little barf bag that I've got. All right. That I'm gonna have to just upchuck into it, because when you take this and you bring it forward to today, you take all rational discernment, the God of my understanding, compassion, people, love. Try to apply that to today? Are you kidding me? I shake my head.
It's dangerous, especially when you don't. I'd love to, we're not going to do it today, go back and investigate those words. What was really being said there?
Right.
Who were they really talking to?
I love your point.
The idea of authority, God's authority has become more personal, an awareness of God's authority. And you can break this down word by word. It's not necessarily what man said is the authority. It's what God. But Jesus did exactly what this is saying don't do. He rebelled against, he was a maverick, and he rebelled against the ruling authority. By that definition, then he deserved to be put to death. Wow, that's Jesus, not that he was saving us from the old thinking and the old paradigms. No, he was bad and he was wrong. That's not a Jesus I believe in.
No.
Jesus was a both and reality. He came in love and in peace to fulfill the law, but also to challenge law.
Exactly.
That was man-made.
And I love what you said. He's the authority.
Yes.
So if we put that perspective over the top of this, then I think it changes everything. You're right. We don't have time to pick it apart. We could easily do that. Right?
Yes.
There's no problem with that. My counsel at this point, as we wrap this episode up, is to say that we can go into the Bible. As Christians, we can go into the Bible for guidance, direction, truth, to whatever extent you want to do it. But in my faith, there is an overarching truth that just holds everything together. And I can't go anyplace else with that, but God loves us. God is love.
Yeah.
Period. And so when I run it through that grid, because that's the overarching grid I run it through, I have a lot of trouble gathering people up, putting them in detention centers, splitting families, abusing them.
And let's be fair on all sides. Name calling, violent acts.
Right.
This is also not a God-driven reality.
No.
This is an ego-driven reality. So it's everybody who's acting out of accordance with love is the answer. And love sometimes can be tough. Jesus had tough love. We have to take the breath and breathe. Can both exist, justice and love, in the same field? I believe it can. A good choice that's coming from that awareness and that breath and that pause.
Well, there's the wisdom and the truth and the guidance that we're going to leave you with on this episode. Just 10 second back and listen to what the Rev just said. That's our encouragement to you through this episode. We appreciate if you stuck with us, whether you were agreeing with us or you didn't. Hopefully we gave you some ponder points. Anyway, so Rev, thanks for the wisdom.
Thanks for letting me put my bias on the table and being willing to play with it.
All right, brother. I love you. Thanks a bunch. And we'll do it again next week.